There was a time when communication moved at the speed of walking. Letters traveled from hand to hand, from house to house, carried in leather bags by people who knew every address on their route. The distance between writing words and reading them was measured in days, sometimes weeks, creating spaces of time that filled with anticipation, worry, hope, and patience. Mailboxes stood at the end of driveways like small monuments to expectation. Rural mailboxes lined country roads, their red flags serving as signals between households and the postal workers, who connected distant lives. City mailboxes clustered in apartment building lobbies, creating daily gathering points where neighbors might cross paths while checking for letters. The sound of mail delivery became part of neighborhood rhythm. Mail trucks rumbling down residential streets, footsteps on front porches, the metallic click of mailbox doors opening and closing. Dogs learned these sounds. Children recognized them. Elderly people timed their days around them. Letter writing required intention and preparation. Paper had to be selected, pens chosen, thoughts organized before the first words appeared on the page. There was no deleting, no easy correction, no instant revision. Letters emerged through deliberate process, each word considered carefully because rewriting meant starting over completely. Kitchen tables became writing desks where families composed letters to distant relatives, friends who had moved away, children serving in military, elderly parents living alone. The ritual of letter writing created quiet time in busy households, moments when conversation stopped and handwriting began. Stationery boxes held the tools of written communication, different papers for different occasions. Plain white for business letters, decorative borders for social correspondence, heavy cream paper for important announcements, fountain pens, ballpoint pens, pencils for drafts, envelopes that matched the paper, stamps carefully applied in the upper right corner. Address books became treasured possessions, filled with careful handwriting that recorded the locations of people who mattered. Addresses were copied and recopied as friends moved, family members relocated, correspondents changed their circumstances. Keeping current addresses required constant attention and regular updates. The weight of letters varied with their importance. Single sheets carried brief messages, quick updates, simple acknowledgments. Multiple pages suggested significant news, detailed storytelling, emotional complexity that required extended expression. The thickness of an envelope hinted at the importance of its contents. Children learned letter writing as part of school curriculum and family education. Thank you notes for birthday gifts, letters to grandparents, correspondence with pen pals in distant states. The discipline of organizing thoughts into written words, addressing envelopes correctly, applying appropriate postage amounts. Military families lived by letter schedules. Wives wrote to deployed husbands daily, sending updates about home life, children's activities, community news. Soldiers wrote home when circumstances permitted, sharing what they could about their experiences, while censorship rules determined what information was allowed. Love letters carried special weight and received special treatment. Young couples separated by distance wrote daily letters that chronicled their feelings, their plans, their longing to be together. These letters were saved, tied with ribbons, preserved as physical evidence of emotional connection across miles and months. Busyness correspondence followed formal patterns that guided professional communication. Typed letters on company letterhead for official business, handwritten notes for personal business relationships, carbon copies kept for records, filing systems that organized correspondence by date, topic, and priority. Post office boxes provided private addresses for people who needed mail security or convenience. Small businesses, apartment dwellers, people who traveled frequently might rent post office boxes to ensure reliable mail delivery. Checking post office boxes required trips to the post office, creating regular contact with postal workers. Mail delivery schedules varied by location and service level. Rural routes might deliver mail every other day or 3 times per week. Urban areas typically received daily delivery except Sundays. Business districts might receive multiple deliveries per Dalton Y, accommodating the heavy commercial correspondence that sustained business relationships. The anticipation of letter arrival influenced daily routines. People would time their activities around expected mail delivery, listening for the mail carrier's approach, checking mailboxes immediately after delivery trucks passed. The possibility that important letters might arrive created ongoing awareness of mail schedules. Letter writing sessions often involved family members writing simultaneously at the same table, sharing the quiet companionship of written communication. Parents writing to their own parents, children working on school assignments, teenagers corresponding with distant friends. The kitchen table became a communication center. International letters required additional patience and planning. Overseas, mail traveled by ship initially, later by airplane, but even airmail required weeks for delivery and response. Families with relatives in other countries measured their relationships in months rather than days, planning correspondence around long delays. Handwriting became a form of personal identification. Family members recognized each other's handwriting on envelopes before opening them. The slope of letters, the formation of specific letters, the pressure of pen on paper created unique signatures that identified correspondence before the return address was consulted. Letter openers served practical and ceremonial functions. The ritual of slitting open envelopes carefully, preserving the envelope as well as the letter contents. Some families kept ornate letter openers on writing desks, treating mail opening as a formal activity that deserved appropriate tools. Postal rates influenced letter writing frequency and length. When postage rates increased, people might write longer letters to maximize the value of each stamp, or reduce their correspondence frequency to manage postal costs. The price of communication affected how much communication occurred. Special delivery services provided faster letter transmission for urgent correspondence. The extra cost of special delivery was reserved for truly important letters, death notices, birth announcements, business emergencies. Regular mail served routine correspondence, while special services handled time-sensitive communication. Mail sorting became a household ritual. Letters separated from bills, personal correspondence from business mail, local letters from distant correspondence. Families developed systems for organizing incoming mail, ensuring that important letters received appropriate attention while routine mail was handled efficiently. Letter reading often occurred in specific locations within homes. Favorite chairs for personal correspondence, kitchen tables for business letters, bedrooms for private letters that required solitude. The physical location of letter reading became associated with different types of communication and emotional experiences. Postal workers became familiar community figures who knew family patterns and correspondence habits. Mail carriers learned which households received heavy correspondence, which families had relatives serving overseas, which addresses needed special attention for elderly residents or people with mobility limitations. Letter preservation required careful attention to storage and organization. Special boxes for saving important correspondence, filing systems that organized letters by sender and date, protective measures against moisture and deterioration. Family letters became historical documents that preserved family history and personal relationships, Seasonal patterns influenced letter writing frequency and content. Christmas letters updating distant relatives about family news during the previous year. Summer letters from children at camp describing their activities and experiences. Holiday letters expressing gratitude, seasonal greetings, and renewal of distant relationships. Letter writing supplies required regular replenishment and careful management. Running out of stamps meant postponing letter sending until post office visits could be arranged. Depleted stationery supplies required shopping trips to select appropriate paper and envelopes for different types of correspondence. The emotional weight of letters varied with their timing and content. Letters arriving during difficult periods provided comfort and connection. Letters delayed beyond expected arrival, dates created worry and anxiety. The absence of expected letters could be as meaningful as their presence. College students maintained relationships with home through regular correspondence. Weekly letters home updating parents about academic progress, social activities, financial needs. Letters from home providing family news, encouragement, and emotional support. During the challenging transition to independent life, business relationships were maintained through written correspondence that required formal language and careful attention to professional protocols. Letters of introduction, letters of recommendation, letters negotiating contracts and business arrangements. The formality of written business communication influenced how professional relationships developed. Letter delivery on Saturdays provided weekend mail that might include personal correspondence from family and friends. Saturday mail delivery created weekend reading material and weekend letter writing activities. The rhythm of 6-day mail delivery influenced weekly patterns of correspondence and communication. Rural mail delivery required coordination between postal workers and farm families, who might be working in distant fields during delivery times. Rural mailboxes designed to accommodate larger mail volumes, with mail carriers who knew farming schedules and seasonal work patterns. Chain letters created community-wide correspondence patterns that involved neighbors writing to strangers according to specific instructions. These letters promised good fortune for participants who continued the chain and bad luck for those who broke it, creating informal networks of written communication among people who might never meet. Letter writing paper came in various qualities and prices that influenced the presentation and perceived importance of correspondence. Expensive paper for important letters, standard paper for routine correspondence, cheap paper for drafts and practice. The quality of paper conveyed respect for the recipient and importance of the message. Ink selection influenced letter appearance and permanence. Fountain pen ink in various colors for personal letters, black ink for business correspondence, pencil for temporary messages. The choice of writing implement affected both the appearance of the letter and the ease of writing process. Return addresses on letters provided information about sender location and identity, but also created opportunities for correspondence mistakes when people moved frequently or used temporary addresses. Accurate return addresses ensured that undeliverable letters could be returned to senders rather than lost permanently. Letter writing etiquette governed appropriate correspondence behavior, including proper salutations, appropriate closing phrases, correct dating and addressing procedures. Social expectations about letter writing courtesy influenced how people learned to correspond and maintain written relationships. Mail fraud concerns influenced how people approached unknown correspondence and business letters from unfamiliar sources. Fraudulent letters promising money or opportunities required careful evaluation, particularly for elderly people who might be targeted by mail-based scam operations. Post office holidays disrupted regular correspondence schedules, creating delays in letter delivery that required adjustment of correspondence timing and expectations. National holidays, when post offices closed, meant that urgent letters might need to be sent earlier to ensure timely delivery. Letter writing instruments evolved from quill pens to fountain pens to ballpoint pens, but the basic process of forming words by hand remained constant. The physical effort of handwriting influenced letter length and frequency, since writing long letters required sustained manual effort. Airmail services reduced letter delivery times for distant correspondence, but required additional postage costs that influenced how frequently people used faster delivery options. International correspondence benefited significantly from airmail services, reducing weeks-long delays to days, long waits for letter delivery. Privacy concerns influenced letter writing content and delivery methods, particularly during wartime when mail censorship monitored correspondence for security violations. People learned to write carefully about sensitive topics, understanding that letters might be read by officials before reaching intended recipients. Letter writing styles reflected educational background and social class, creating written communication patterns that revealed information about correspondence beyond the explicit content of their messages. Handwriting quality, vocabulary choices, and letter organization provided social information about letter writers. Family letter writing traditions pass correspondence skills from generation to generation, with children learning letter writing by observing parents and grandparents compose letters to distant relatives. These skills included proper addressing, appropriate content organization, and maintenance of ongoing written relationships. Business letter templates provided standardized formats for professional correspondence, ensuring that business letters followed accepted conventions for formal communication. Form letters allowed businesses to maintain correspondence with customers and suppliers while managing correspondence costs and time requirements. Letter copying methods allowed correspondents to keep records of important letters before sending them. Carbon paper for typed letters, hand copying for handwritten letters, or dictating letter contents to family members who could make copies. Maintaining correspondence records helped track ongoing communication. Postal regulations governed letter size, weight, and addressing requirements that influenced how letters were prepared and mailed. Standard envelope sizes, weight limits for regular postage rates, addressing requirements that ensured proper delivery. Understanding postal regulations helped ensure efficient letter delivery. Letter delivery confirmation services provided assurance that important letters reached their intended destinations, but required additional costs and procedures that made confirmed delivery impractical for routine correspondence. Most letters were sent without delivery confirmation, trusting postal services to complete delivery. Group letters allowed families to share correspondence costs and effort by having multiple family members contribute to single letters sent to distant relatives. Each family member might write a section of a longer letter, sharing news and maintaining relationships while reducing postage costs and writing effort. Letter writing campaigns organized communities around shared concerns or political issues, with groups of people writing similar letters to elected officials or business leaders. These campaigns demonstrated community opinion through volume of correspondence rather than through individual letter content. Postal money orders provided secure methods for sending money through mail systems, allowing people to transmit funds safely over long distances. Money orders required trips to post offices and additional fees, but provided alternatives to sending cash through regular mail services. Library mail services allowed rural communities to receive books and educational materials through postal systems, extending library services to areas without local library facilities. These services relied on regular mail delivery to provide educational opportunities in remote areas. Letter writing contests encouraged people to develop correspondence skills and provided entertainment through competition around written communication abilities. School contests, community contests, and commercial contests motivated people to practice letter writing while competing for prizes and recognition. Seasonal letter writing patterns reflected holiday cycles and special occasions that prompted increased correspondence. Christmas cards, birthday letters, anniversary correspondence, graduation, congratulations. Special occasions created natural opportunities for maintaining distant relationships through written communication. Dead letter offices handled mail that couldn't be delivered due to incorrect addresses, insufficient postage, or missing recipients. These postal facilities attempted to return undeliverable mail to senders. But letters without return addresses might accumulate in dead letter offices indefinitely. Letter writing clubs provided social opportunities for people who enjoyed correspondence as a hobby, organizing pen-pal relationships and correspondence exchanges between strangers who shared interests in written communication. These clubs facilitated friendships based entirely on written correspondence. International pen-pal programs connected American children with children in other countries, providing cultural exchange opportunities through written correspondence. These programs required adult supervision and cultural sensitivity, but created educational experiences that broadened children's understanding of other countries. Military mail services provided special postal handling for correspondence to and from military personnel, including forwarding services for troops who moved frequently and expedited services for mail to combat zones. Military families relied heavily on postal services to maintain family connections. Rural free delivery extended postal services to farm families and isolated communities that previously required trips to post offices for mail pickup. Home mail delivery transformed rural communication patterns, making regular correspondence more practical for people living in remote areas. Letter writing disabilities required adaptive strategies and tools for people with physical limitations that affected their ability to write by hand. Typewriters, dictation services, and assistance from family members allowed people with various disabilities to maintain correspondence despite physical challenges. Postal banking services provided financial services through post office facilities, allowing people to conduct banking transactions through mail systems. These services particularly benefited rural communities that lacked local banking facilities but had access to postal services. Letter preservation methods protected important correspondence from deterioration and damage, including careful storage in acid-free containers and protection from light, moisture, and temperature changes. Family letters became historical documents that required appropriate preservation for future generations. Wartime censorship influenced letter content and delivery times, as military authorities reviewed correspondence for security violations before allowing letters to reach their destinations. Families learned to write carefully about military activities and home front conditions while maintaining emotional connections. Express mail services provided faster letter delivery for customers willing to pay premium rates for expedited service. These services competed with regular mail by offering delivery guarantees and reduced transmission times, but remained expensive enough to limit their use to urgent correspondence. Post office architecture reflected community pride and postal service importance, with many towns building impressive post office buildings that served as civic landmarks. Post office buildings often included community meeting spaces and provided employment for local residents. Letter writing supplies marketing targeted different customer needs and preferences, with manufacturers producing various grades of paper envelopes, and writing instruments for personal and business correspondence. Stationery stores specialized in providing appropriate supplies for different types of correspondence. Rural mail carriers became community figures who provided social connection and informal services beyond mail delivery. Mail carriers might check on elderly residents, deliver messages between neighbors, and provide emergency communication during difficult weather conditions or local emergencies. International mail treaties established postal cooperation agreements between countries, ensuring that letters could move reliably between nations, despite different postal systems and regulations. These treaties created standardized procedures for international correspondence that facilitated global written communication. Letter writing education taught children proper correspondence skills through school instruction and family guidance, ensuring that young people learn to communicate effectively through written letters. These skills were considered essential for adult life and professional success. Postal innovations improved letter handling efficiency and delivery speed while maintaining the basic pattern of written correspondence that moved at deliberate pace compared to later communication technologies. Innovations enhanced postal services without eliminating the waiting periods that characterized letter-based communication. Commercial letter services provided businesses with efficient methods for handling large volumes of correspondence, including addressing services, mailing services, and form letter preparation. These services helped businesses maintain customer relationships through written communication while managing correspondence costs. Letter writing therapy provided emotional benefits for people dealing with grief, separation, and other difficult circumstances. Writing letters to deceased relatives, distant family members, or absent friends provided emotional outlets and connection maintenance during challenging periods. Postal employee training ensured that mail carriers and postal workers understood proper mail handling procedures and customer service expectations. Postal employment provided stable jobs in many communities while maintaining essential communication services that connected distant locations. Letter delivery routes required careful planning and regular updates as communities grew and changed. Mail carriers learned complex delivery routes that included apartment buildings, rural areas, business districts, and residential neighborhoods while maintaining efficient delivery schedules. Seasonal mail volume changes influenced postal staffing and service levels, with Christmas seasons creating heavy mail loads that required temporary employees and extended service hours. Holiday mail processing required advance planning to ensure that seasonal correspondence reached recipients appropriately. Letter writing romance created courtship patterns based on written communication rather than frequent personal contact. Couples separated by distance developed relationships through letters that revealed personality, intelligence, and emotional compatibility before physical relationships became central. Family newsletter writing allowed large families to share news efficiently with distant relatives by creating periodic newsletters that updated multiple family members simultaneously. These newsletters reduced individual correspondence requirements while maintaining family connections across geographic distances. Letter writing retirement provided elderly people with meaningful activities and social connections when other activities became difficult. Maintaining correspondence with friends and relatives provided purpose and community connection for people whose mobility or health limited other social activities. Postal route advertising allowed businesses to reach customers through direct mail campaigns that targeted specific geographic areas. These advertising methods relied on postal delivery systems to reach customers efficiently while supporting postal service revenues through business mail volumes. Letter writing supplies inheritance, passed correspondence materials from generation to generation, including special papers, writing instruments, and letter-writing furniture that maintained family correspondence traditions. These inherited supplies carried sentimental value beyond their practical utility. International correspondence created diplomatic connections between countries and communities, with sister city programs and cultural exchanges facilitated through written communication between individuals and organizations in different nations. Letters provided grassroots international relationship building. Letter writing privacy protection required careful attention to envelope addressing and personal information security, particularly for people whose correspondence might be subject to unwanted attention. Private mail delivery and secure addressing methods protected sensitive correspondence from unauthorized reading. Community post offices served as social centers where residents gathered to collect mail, purchase stamps, and exchange community news. Small-town post offices provided meeting places that facilitated informal communication and social connection beyond their official postal functions. Letter-writing campaigns influenced political and social change by demonstrating community opinion through volume of correspondence to elected officials and business leaders. Organized letter writing provided peaceful methods for expressing citizen concerns and requesting governmental or corporate action. Postal service reliability created community trust in written communication systems, with most letters reaching their destinations, despite the complex handling required to move correspondence across long distances. Reliable postal services enabled commerce, family connections, and social relationships that depended on written communication. Letter-writing customs varied by region and cultural background, with different communities developing distinct approaches to correspondence frequency, formality, and content. Regional differences in letter writing reflected local values and communication preferences while maintaining common postal systems. Busyness correspondence filing required office organization systems that managed incoming and outgoing letters, maintained records of business relationships, and provided reference materials for ongoing commercial activities. Effective letter filing enabled businesses to maintain customer service and historical records. Letter writing materials sourcing required access to paper suppliers, ink manufacturers, and envelope producers that provided consistent quality supplies for personal and business correspondence. Local stationery stores and mail order suppliers ensured that letter writers had access to necessary materials. International letter delivery required cooperation between national postal services that handled correspondence across borders despite different languages, currencies, and governmental systems. International mail systems demonstrated diplomatic cooperation and technical coordination between nations. Letter writing employment provided jobs for professional letter writers who helped illiterate or disabled individuals maintain correspondence with family members and business associates. Professional letter writers served communities where literacy rates required assistance with written communication. Postal innovation history demonstrated technological advances that improved letter handling efficiency while preserving the essential character of written correspondence. Innovations in mail processing, delivery methods, and postal organization enhanced services without eliminating the deliberate pace of letter-based communication. Rural letter delivery challenges required postal services to reach isolated areas despite difficult weather conditions, poor roads, and long distances between delivery points. Rural mail carriers demonstrated commitment to community service while maintaining regular delivery schedules under challenging circumstances. Letter writing social class reflected educational and economic differences that influenced correspondence quality, frequency, and content. Written communication served different functions for various social groups while providing common methods for maintaining relationships across geographic distances. Commercial letter handling provided businesses with efficient methods for managing customer correspondence, including form letters, personalized responses, and bulk mailing services that maintained customer relationships while controlling correspondence costs and time requirements. Letter writing memory preservation created family archives that documented personal relationships and historical events through private correspondence. Family letter collections became historical resources that revealed personal perspectives on community events and social changes. Postal service economics required balance between service quality and operational costs, with postal rates and service levels adjusted to maintain financial stability while providing essential communication services. Postal economics influenced service availability and delivery frequency in different communities. Letter writing tradition maintenance required conscious effort to preserve correspondence skills and customs as alternative communication methods became available. Families and communities that valued written correspondence worked to maintain letter writing traditions despite technological changes. Community postal services created local employment opportunities and provided essential services that supported business and personal relationships. Post offices served as community anchors that facilitated communication and commerce, while providing stable employment for local residents. Letter writing celebration recognized correspondence as a valuable skill and important cultural practice through contests, exhibitions, and educational programs that promoted written communication. Letter writing celebrations acknowledged the personal and social value of thoughtful written correspondence. Eventually, other voices began reaching across distances. Telephone lines carried conversations that crossed states in minutes rather than weeks. Electronic messages traveled at speeds that made postal delivery seem geological in its slowness. The space between writing and reading compressed until it nearly disappeared. The mailbox flags raised less frequently. The daily check for letters gradually became a search for packages, bills, advertisements. Personal correspondence moved to other channels, leaving postal services to handle commerce and official business rather than intimate communication. Children stopped learning letter writing as essential life skill. The careful formation of thoughts into handwritten words became an art rather than a necessity. Thank you notes became optional courtesies rather than expected social obligations. Address books gathered dust as contact information moved to digital storage. Some people continued writing letters by choice rather than necessity, recognizing that the slower pace of written correspondence created different kinds of relationships and different qualities of communication. Handwritten letters became precious gifts rather than routine communication methods. Stationery stores closed or converted to other retail purposes as demand for letter writing supplies diminished. Fountain pens became collector items rather than daily writing tools. Personal stationery became a luxury rather than a household necessity. The Postal Service adapted to changed communication patterns by focusing on package delivery and commercial mail while reducing frequency of residential delivery. Mail carriers still walked neighborhood routes, but the letters they carried were mostly bills and advertising, rather than personal correspondence. Family letter collections in attics and closets became historical artifacts that documented how relationships had once been maintained across distance and time. The ribbon, tied bundles of love letters, the carefully preserved correspondence with overseas relatives, the children's letters home from summer camp, physical evidence of communication patterns that had shaped family life for generations. Writing desks became decorative furniture rather than functional workspace. Letter openers became antique collectibles. The skills of proper envelope addressing and appropriate salutation selection became old-fashioned knowledge rather than practical necessities. But sometimes, in the pause before sending an instant message, in the frustration with quick communication that felt inadequate for important thoughts, in the recognition that some feelings required more time and care than immediate transmission allowed, people remembered the weight of letters, the anticipation of their arrival, the care required to write them properly. The mailbox still stood at the end of the driveway, though it held different things now. The postal service still delivered to every address, though the contents had changed. The time between writing and reading had compressed to nearly nothing, though some communications still required the patience that letters had taught. When waiting for letters was part of life, people learned different lessons about communication, about the weight of words that couldn't be retrieved once sent, about the value of thoughts that required time to develop fully, about relationships that could survive and even grow stronger through the spaces between letters. The days and weeks when distance made the heart grow fonder, not because of absence, but because of the promise that words would eventually bridge the gap. In the end, letters had been more than messages. They had been small acts of faith that distance could be crossed, that relationships could survive separation, that words carefully chosen and deliberately sent could carry enough meaning to sustain connection across space and time. When waiting for letters was part of life, patience was not just a virtue, but a practice, a skill learned through necessity and refined through repetition. The waiting had been part of the message. The time between sending and receiving had been part of the communication. When letters moved slowly, relationships learned to breathe slowly too.